And welcome to the painting party. I'm Julie Swanson Davis for Blick Art Materials. Don't you love the look of a slatboard panel? I sure do, and I've always wanted to do some of my paintings on one, but I'm not exactly a wood shop kind of girl. I'm very afraid of splinters. Plus, I thought I need a table saw and a drill and lots of equipment to make my own. There's pre-made ones out there, but they get a little pricey. But what if I told you that there is a way to make your own slatboard surface in just a few minutes using only glue and scissors? It's true. It's a ready-to-paint surface. So I'm going to demonstrate how to make one, and then we get to make a painting together. These are basswood sheets. Basswood is a light-colored soft wood. It is a true wood panel. They come in different thicknesses, and they're available in a package of 15, which is perfect for sharing with a group. They can be cut down with a packing knife, a pair of heavy-duty scissors, or a strong paper cutter, and you can get a lot of paintings out of one package that way. So, to make a panel, I need some wide slats. This was cut out of two 24-inch strips. It's 1/8 of an inch thick, so it's rigid enough, but yet I was still able to take it to the paper cutter and cut it down. On the back side, I'm going to need a few narrow strips. So I have a 1-inch wide strip here. So I'm going to just line up my panel pieces here with just a little gap in between them. So this is going to be the back side here. Now I'm going to take this 1-inch piece, and with a pencil I'm just going to mark the size I need it to be. And just slice that with my scissors. I'll need to have at least 2 of those, maybe 3. All right, now I'm going to apply some Elmer's wood glue to the back side of this. All right, now I'm just going to turn that over and line it up over here on the right side. And I don't know, there's probably a technical term to this. My dad used to say you just scooch it a little. Let's do the next one, and one more down the middle. Now the best thing to do would be to wait for this to dry, but I am really eager to get started painting, so I'm going to use a little masking tape, and I'm just going to wrap this like so. This will hold them in place while I get started. And then I can remove the masking tape later once I'm done. All right, let's turn this over. I have poured out here some Blick Acrylic Venetian Red, and I'm going to first do a dry brush technique. What I mean is I do not dip my brush into the water at all. I just start out with a dry brush, dipping it into the paint and bringing that right onto the wood panel. Now this wood is super absorbent, so that paint is going right into it. You'll notice my technique is to go back and forth, over and over again. I do have to go back and reload paint quite a bit because it's soaking right in. The brush I'm using is a 1-inch wide square brush. This is a Blick Scholastic Golden Taklon brush. You'll notice I'm leaving some spaces, letting that wood actually come through. This also makes it look more like worn paint. Okay, once I have all 4 slats painted, I am going to tilt it up gently and just get some of the sides and the top. This is optional. You don't need to do this necessarily. If you overpaint it a little bit and it's more solid than you'd like it to be, you can always take a little bit of a rough sandpaper and just remove some of that paint. But I kind of like the way it looks, so I'm just going to start painting. Let me put my brush on the water. Always want to put your brush on the water. Don't want the paint to dry in it. Okay, now people love the look of birds, and you could use a stencil to do this, But why use a stencil if you can paint it yourself? It's not that difficult to do. Here's a little trick for you. I have just probably a 2.5 inch square piece of construction paper here, and I'm going to fold it in half vertically and make a crease. Now, do you remember when we were in elementary school and we needed to make valentines for each other? If you don't, I'm going to give you a quick refresher on that. So we folded in half vertically. Now I'm going to fold it again, one more time, and again. Then I'll open up those last two folds so we still have that same vertical piece. Now let me just move my painting aside for a moment. Take a pencil. Starting at the fold right down from the top, the first mark, I'm going to start and put a little dot right there, and then a dot down here at the end. Now, from that, we're going to go up and around towards the edges, and then one line that goes straight down to that dot. Now take your scissors. There's our heart. Now this is going to be our basic bird body. The paint is still just a little wet up here, so I'll start down in this part of it. We're going to pretend like the gaps in between the slat boards here, that those are wires. So I'm going to position my bird body as if it's sitting on a wire. And I'm going to trace around that heart, go across the gaps, and let's do another bird next to it. Notice how I'm turning them kind of in some different directions so I can have the birds facing different areas. Five birds total, 5 hearts total. Let's just set that aside for now. We need heads for the birds, so I grabbed a quarter. That's just about the perfect size for the bird head. So I'm going to position it right between the two curves at the top of the heart and trace around it. If it runs into a gap between the slats, just let it drop through. If it overlaps another bird, that's okay too. Okay, now I'm going to start painting my birds. Let me introduce you now to a friend of mine. This is Blick Matte Acrylic. You know, there are times where you just want an acrylic paint that's very opaque. Otherwise, a more transparent acrylic paint with a lighter body, such as our Blick Acrylic, you might need to do 2 coats instead of just 1. So Blick Matte Acrylic is very opaque, and we'll be able to make this painting really with just 1 coat. I'm going to start with that black color here. This is Blick Matte Acrylic Black, and I'm just going to show you how I can put this on. And I've just got 1 coat, and there it is. This is going to dry with that beautiful matte surface, just like the wood behind me, the wood in the background. Now I am using a 1/4 inch flat brush, just like the 1 inch brush I used to paint the background. When we get up into the head area, you may prefer to go to a smaller brush first. This is a size 2 round brush. So I can trace the outside of that circle and then fill it in if I'd like. Okay, now you see this gap between the head and the wings? I'm just going to fill that in with the black paint. Okay, a couple more black birds. All right, there's 3 black birds. Now, we really need to get the tail on there in order for you to know that that's a bird. So using that same brush, which is a 1/4 inch flat brush, I'm going to start here at the end of the little heart, and I'm just going to roughly make some strokes downward, kind of going off at a diagonal. Now, even though one of the birds that's in the example here is blue, I'm going to paint it white underneath first. That'll make the color blue a little brighter. This is an off-white color. I just thought that would look a little better with the wood, the color of the wood, than the stark white. Once again, I'm using the 1/4 inch flat brush. You could certainly switch and use the round brush. Okay, so now I have 2 birds painted with the off-white. I'm going to create the tail in the same manner. I'll put this flat brush right here at the end of that heart. And I'm just going to make a few strokes like that. This one can go over the bird behind it. Last thing for the birds is the beak. And I think this is what scares people the most, is the beak. It's really not that hard. I've got a trick for it to show you. You don't have to worry about it ending up being fat or rounded or looking more like a nose than a beak if you do it this way. Let's start with the white ones. Okay, I want to have these going different directions so it looks as if the birds are looking different ways. So right here at the edge of the head, where the beak is going to go, I'm going to make a dot like that. Then, while the paint is nice and wet, I've turned my brush upside down, and with my handle, I'm just going to pull it out into a point. Don't overdo it. Don't overthink it. I'm going to do the same with this one. He's looking up at the bird ahead of him. Ran into a little problem with the gap between, so I'll just fill that in. Now clean off my brush, and we'll do the same for our blackbirds. All right, now I'm going to make the lettering that goes up here in the corner. And I know what you're saying right now, Julie. I can't do script like that. My handwriting isn't that neat. Well, guess what? Mine's not either. I went to my computer, picked out a font that I liked, a script font, and it took me a couple of times to get it exactly spaced the way I wanted it to. I've cut it out, and I pretty much know that's going to work for me right there. If you're familiar with transfer paper, this is the Sorrel transfer paper. It comes in different colors. There's graphite, blue, red, and I'm using the white today. So I'm going to place that down where I want my script to be. Then face up, I'm going to place my printout. Now, I don't trust myself not to move that, so I'm going to get my masking tape again, and I'll just tape that in place. Now, with a pencil, I'm just going to trace right over the top of those letters. I don't need to press too terribly hard, but I need to give it a little pressure. I can't do this lightly. See how I'm just kind of filling in over the top of those letters. And then when I come down here, this is a little bit of a thicker letter, so I'm not going to make it quite as solid. I'm just going to go around the outside edges of it. Okay, now I'm just going to grab the end of those masking tape, lift the whole thing off, and look at that. I mean, it's almost good enough just like that, but I am going to paint over the top of it using my little round brush again. And I'm going to use the white paint. Move my palette up here so I don't have to go back so far to keep reloading it. I'm just going to trace over those with some paint. I think one of the tricks to using a small brush like this is to use it just about as lightly as you can. Anytime you press down against the surface when you're using a little brush, it makes it flatten out more, makes it thicker, a little harder to control. So I'm using this with the lightest touch that I can. Now, I'll probably just tell people that I hand lettered that. Shh, our secret. I would love to have a blue bird in here though. I like the white birds, but it just needs maybe a little kick of color. So the color I've selected is Blick Matte Acrylic Blue Light. Let me just pour some of that out onto my palette. Get that 1/4 inch brush again. And let's just go right over that white. I can leave the beak white. There we have the Davis flock. Now I'd let this completely dry, and then I would take some jute twine that we have here and cut a length of that, and then use my wood glue again. I'll just show you on the sample I have here. I used the wood glue and just glued the jute to the back of the wood slats, and now it's ready to hang. So before I finish up, I'd like to show you some of my experiments with the slat board paintings. I found that I could get a watercolor or a stained look by simply adding water to my acrylic paint. It soaks right in and spreads into the wood to soften the paint strokes. Let me just demonstrate that for you real fast here on this slat board. So if I go back to that Venetian red, and let's just add water till we've got a puddle of it here. All right, and do you see how much lighter and softer my strokes become with the water soaking right down in? I can still see the wood grain. That's how I was able to achieve that beach painting. Now the slats can go vertically, and they don't necessarily have to be aligned like this. They can be staggered a bit. You can close any gaps between and make it a much more solid surface. There's just so many things you can do with this. And I bet you have a painting in mind that you'd like to do on a slatboard surface, don't you? Okay, well, visit dickblick.com. You're going to find a materials list of everything I've used today and all these instructions for you. Thank you so much.